now we are going to create our circle. So as we did with the other inputs, we are going to place the circle inside an input of class or a div of class input. Also, let's give this div an ID, thickness, input. So to create the circle inside, we're going to create a div. Okay, let's give it an ID, circle. And now we are going to style this div to get a circle. So we're going to access the circle using, or the div using its ID, circle. So let's give it a height of 3 pixels at the beginning. It's going to be really small at the beginning, okay? And also a width of 3 pixels. And to make it round, we're going to need to give it a high border radius. Okay, we can go for 100%, but 50% is actually enough to get a circle. Okay, now just to see it, let's increase this to 30 and 30, so we can see our circle there. So let's give it a background color. So when we load the page, the circle is black. So let's give it a background black. Okay, and also to center it horizontally, we're going to use the margin property, and we're going to set that to 0 for the top and bottom sides and auto for the left and right sides. And now our circle is centered. Okay. Now let's link the slider to the circle. So we want to be able to change the diameter of the circle depending on the position of the handle. Okay. So first, let's just set the first or start diameter to 3 pixels. That's where we start. Okay. So we're going to go to the JavaScript file, and we're going to need to add options to the slider method. So first of all, we are going to set the min values, the min and max values of the slider to 3 pixels and 30 pixels. So you want the diameter of the circle to go between 3 pixels and 30 pixels. Okay, so that's going to be the value of the slider. So min is going to be 3 and max is going to be 30. And basically what we're doing here, we're going to be using these values of the slider, okay, to set the diameter of the circle. So if the slider is there, that corresponds to 3, and then the circle's diameter is going to be 3 pixels. There is going to be 30, and the circle's diameter is going to be 30 pixels. Okay. Now to change the diameter of the circle when we slide, we are going to use the slide option. And if you remember, this option is going to take a function. Okay, we have covered this in the jQuery UI section. So our function is going to take a couple of parameters, 2 objects. So we're going to have the event object and the UI object. All right. So to access the value of the slider, we need to use the UI object, and then we're going to use the property value. Okay, so let's go ahead and change the width and height of the div or the circle. So we're going to access the circle or the div using its ID, which is circle, and we're going to set the height to the value of the slider, which is UI.value, and we're going to do exactly the same thing for the width. Okay, now let's save and make sure this is working. So if we slide, we can see that our circle changes its diameter. Okay. Now we want our circle to be centered vertically, just like this. Okay. So to do this, we are going to change the position of the circle to absolute, and then we're going to use the top and left properties, and then we're going to do something else. So let's go to the CSS file. So if we set the position of the circle to attribute or absolute, before we do that, we will need to set the position of the parent element to relative, because we want to position the circle relative to the containing div, okay, which is the div of ID thickness input. Okay, so we're going to give it a position relative. Now we're going to move the circle, so we're going to set the top property to 50%. Okay, and also the left property to 50%. Okay, so now what is centered is the top left point of the original div, which is this point. So this point at the moment is centered inside the containing div. Okay, we're looking at this point, but we would like the circle itself to be centered. So what we need to do is move the circle by half its diameter to the left, okay, and also move it by half the diameter to the top. Okay, so we're going to do a translation. Okay, so we're going to use the transform property, and we're going to use the translate function. So we're going to give it two values, minus 50%. Okay, and now we can see okay, let's do it again. So minus 50%. So we moved it to the left. Okay, that's the horizontal move. And for the vertical move, we're going to go for minus 50% as well. And now it's moved to the top. Okay. And now our circle is centered both vertically and horizontally. Okay. Let's add some margin to the slider. Okay, so that we don't touch the slider when the circle becomes too big. So let's do that there. So we can access the slider using its ID, and let's add some margin top and bottom of 10 pixel and auto for the left and right sides. Okay. Again, for cross-browser compatibility, we'll need to duplicate this line and add minus sign WebKit for the first one, and then minus sign Moz, and then minus sign MS, and minus sign Opera minus sign.